You know, something really profound is happening with our youngest generation of adults. There's a split emerging, and it's not just about politics, it's about their entire worldview. And it's creating a gap wider than anything we've seen in decades. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack what's going on with Gen Z and how it all connects back to something as fundamental as our own happiness and mental health.
All right, so let's get right into the numbers because they reveal something pretty startling. Just a couple of decades ago, young men and women basically had similar political views. But now, their paths have gone in completely different directions. Young women are becoming way more liberal. We're talking 40% of them between 18 and 29. And at the exact same time, young men are heading the other way, leaning more and more conservative.
So what on earth is driving this? I mean, it's not just one simple thing, right? It's this whole complicated mix of major political events, the culture of the internet, and some really deep psychological currents. Let's dig in and see what we can find.
Okay, so first up, let's focus on the political journey of young women. This huge shift to the left didn't just come out of nowhere. It was really sparked by a series of major moments in our culture and our politics.
You can almost map out this political awakening. It really kicked off with the 2016 election, and then boom, 2017 brings the #MeToo movement, which spurred a massive wave of engagement. Then you have the rise of progressive women leaders in 2018, giving a whole new model for what leadership could look like. And for so many, the absolute tipping point was the 2022 Supreme Court decision on Roe v. Wade. Suddenly, politics wasn't abstract anymore. It felt incredibly personal.
And you know, this whole shift is really built on a core set of issues. Young women are being mobilized by things like gender inequality and abortion rights for sure, but also by these huge societal challenges like climate change, gun control, and social justice. For them, this isn't just some political game, it's about fundamental safety and fairness.
But here's the thing. While all of this was happening with young women, a completely different movement was taking shape among some young men. Whether they were feeling insecure or like they were losing their place in the world, a lot of them found a home, a community, in this online world called the manosphere.
So what even is the manosphere? Well, think of it as this whole online ecosystem of podcasts, YouTube channels, and influencers that really taps into feelings of male loneliness. It pushes this vision of hypermasculinity and often misogyny, with figures like Andrew Tate becoming unbelievably popular. And here's the kicker. They frame conservatism as the way to bring back a kind of lost male power. And the crazy part is how social media algorithms can pull young guys, some as young as middle school, right into these echo chambers.
Okay, but this is where the story gets really fascinating and, honestly, a little weird. To really get what's going on, we have to talk about happiness and well-being, because the data shows something you absolutely would not expect.
This quote from a researcher, Musa Al-Gharbi, just nails it. Study after study consistently finds that conservatives don't just say they're happier, they also report having a greater sense of meaning in their lives. And this isn't a new thing. This pattern has been showing up for decades, all over the world.
I mean, the numbers are just wild. If you look at surveys going all the way back to 1972, there's this steady, consistent 10 percentage point gap between how many conservatives and liberals say they're very happy. It's one of the most solid, dependable findings in all of social science.
So this brings up a massive question, right? If conservatism is linked to reporting higher levels of happiness, why are so many people, especially young women, flocking to an ideology that seems to be associated with feeling, well, less happy?
All right, to crack this puzzle, we've got to look deeper than just happiness. We need to get into the nitty-gritty of mental health, anxiety, and the very specific stresses of living in the world today.
And wow, the data here is pretty jarring. Across every age group, and for both men and women, liberals are roughly twice as likely as conservatives to report being diagnosed with a mental illness, and the numbers show this is particularly true for white liberals, who are far more likely than any other group to report a diagnosis.
So what is going on here? What's causing all this distress? Well, researchers have a few ideas, but one really big one keeps popping up. Just how intense and draining it is to be politically engaged today, especially when you're online.
Get a load of this number. One study found that over 65% of people who were politically active on social media said it was causing them psychological stress. I mean, think about it. The constant fighting, the doom scrolling, the outrage, the anger, it all takes a real mental toll.
In fact, this is so common now that researchers actually have a name for it: political anxiety. And it's a very specific kind of stress that's triggered by the political world itself. It can hit you even if you're not someone who typically struggles with anxiety in other parts of your life.
And this isn't just some vague feeling. They found it's a totally separate thing from generalized anxiety. Just look at how they compare. For example, having more education is usually linked to less generalized anxiety, but it's linked to more political anxiety. We see the same kind of split with race, too. It's a completely different beast.
So the big takeaway here is pretty clear. For a lot of us, politics isn't just another thing to worry about anymore, like bills or work. It has become its own powerful and often totally overwhelming source of stress.
Okay, so let's put all the pieces together. We have a whole generation splitting in two, politically. We have all this evidence showing that this political engagement is linked to a lot of real distress. So the final piece of the puzzle is, how do we make sense of all this? Because there's a real fight over the meaning behind it.
And this brings us to a really crucial point. What looks like a major double standard. When we see young men getting radicalized online, it's often talked about as a serious ideological threat. But when young women show that same level of political anger or anxiety, how is it framed? Often, it's just dismissed as a psychological problem. They're labeled unhinged or too emotional.
This quote from Emma Edwards just hits the nail on the head. She calls it gendered delegitimization. Basically, a man's political passion is seen as a matter of principle, but that same passion in a woman is just seen as irrational or toxic.
And look, this isn't just some abstract academic idea. This growing divide has huge, real-world consequences. We're talking about friendships and romantic relationships falling apart, our society becoming more and more polarized. And as Gen Z gets older, this ideological gap could seriously threaten our ability to agree on anything, affecting everything from how we build families to the jobs we take.
So that leaves us with a really tough question to chew on. Is all this intense political emotion we see today, especially from young people, the necessary fuel we need for positive change? Or is it just becoming a symptom of our own collective distress, a force that's actually pulling us apart in the process? The answer to that? Well, it's probably going to define the future for an entire generation.